What's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Today, we're going down the YouTube rabbit hole, or the nostalgia rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, and talking about Pimp My Ride. My thoughts on the mid-2000s car customizing show coming up right now. Alright, so Pimp My Ride, this mid-2000s car customizing and slight cringe fest. I'm sure its popularity was sort of launched alongside the Fast and the Furious franchise because, they hit their stride around the same time. So, obviously, the show aired on MTV, and it had several spin-offs, either hosted by Lil Jon Fat Joe Westwood out in the UK, but the main show was hosted by Exhibit, who's a rapper, in the US. Now, the first, I think, 3 or 4 seasons were, done in conjunction with the shop West Coast Customs, and then I think the final season, or seasons 5 and 6, I'm not sure how many seasons of the show there were. Some places have it listed as 6, and some have it as 5. But the latter season or 2 were done with Galpin Autosports or Gas. And I felt nostalgic because when it was first on the air and when basically, syndication was becoming a real thing up here, the channel Much Music would run certain shows from MTV down in the States, and Pimp My Ride was one of them, so I would try to catch it whenever I could. I mean, I've always loved cars because I don't know what it is. It's just, I don't know whether I don't want to call it a male thing, but I mean, I've always loved cars, right? And I've gone to the Canadian International Auto Show several years. I worked a few, and I've always been a fan of cars. So Pimp My Ride was right up my alley because I was in high school, and you start to see like the customization thing come around because of films like The Fast and the Furious and the films in the franchise to that point, like Too Fast, Too Furious, or Tokyo Drift. The thing that I remember most about Pimp My Ride was, like, how do you even... some of these upgrades, or the pimping, shall we say, like, the things that they would put in these vehicles, looking back on it now, like 15 years later... So some of these upgrades made no sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a chandelier and a Trans Am. There was a hot tub and I think it was an 85 40 Econoline. Why? Who needs a hot tub in the back of their van? There's just certain things that I don't want to mix. Like, you don't want to mix electronics and water, right? Now, if you're going to upgrade something like, say, a 40 Econoline van or any car, right, it has electronics in it, and you want to throw a water feature in there, why? Like, there were waterfalls in the back of a Dodge Caravan that they did, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I certainly hope nothing gets wet. Like, just nothing malfunctions. Because it's just water and electronics, like, not a good mix. It's like oil and water. No thank you. No mas, okay? But some of these upgrades made no sense, like the ones I just listed. And then, like, they put a chandelier in a Pontiac Trans Am, which, why? Why would you? How? Like, I understand that, a lot of this stuff was strictly cosmetic, and due to certain legalities, you couldn't keep certain things in these vehicles because of where they were. I think they were out in LA or out in Southern California somewhere. But, like, why would you... I mean, I'm sure at the time MTV's fronting the bill to either West Coast Customs, and I think the latter seasons were filmed at Galpin Autosports or Gas. So, why would you even... If this stuff's strictly cosmetic and just for the cameras, and MTV's like fronting the bill, like, why would you even think, hey, let's put this in a car just to make it look pretty, but because of certain legalities, you have to take the stuff out of the car because you can't actually legally drive the car down the road if it's got this inside. Like, why? I don't understand. Like, what is this, like, philosophy? And I work in television. I work in media. Who comes up with this, like, sort of philosophy where it's like, oh, it's just pretty for the camera, and, like, we'll take care of the legalities, like, once they stop rolling. Why would you even want to put that in a car? Like, why would you want to put yourself in that position? I don't understand it. But that's just my rant on the certain production aspects of this show. Like, I understand that the cars, because, certain contestants have done, like, Reddit AMAs, and there are videos on YouTube. I will link a few down below. I think one that sticks out to me is the Volkswagen thing, which, that's a video I will link in the cards or down below, where I think it's the husband of the woman who was actually on the show, because it was her car. It was like a 73 Volkswagen thing. They obviously had to make certain concessions. She wanted, like, navigation, but they put a boat GPS in the car, and apparently the guy that they called Mad Mike on the show just said, look, it's not going to help you on the streets. Like, it's not going to help you get around any easier on the streets, so you might as well just sell it. And they did. The guy said that Mad Mike was a nice guy, and the show had contacted his now wife, who was the contestant on the show, saying that, Pimp My Ride was strictly cosmetic. They would do nothing mechanical to the car. Now, you would think, like, because these contestants or whoever, these people that auditioned or, were selected to be on the show, the cars that they have look like they have a ton of mechanical issues, right? Like, I don't understand this whole, like, let's just dress up the outside and then the car's still going to be a bucket. Like, I understand you got to make it pretty, but I mean, a car has to run. Okay? Like, and I understand that the cars of these people, they were in the shops for months because it takes a long time to work on either these upgrades or just the cars themselves, right? I remember one specific episode where there was somebody who had halves of two different Ford Taurusi, I don't know. It was two different Ford Taurus, like two halves of two different Ford Tauruses put together to make one car. And it was welded, and then there was, like, liquid nail. It was legitimately like glue and a weld. I mean, I remember thinking, like, where do you find these people and where do they find these cars? It's just, like I said, the two Ford Taurus halves that were welded together and stuck together with liquid nail or, some sort of glue and wood screws to keep the car together. Bad idea. And they couldn't do it, I think, from a legal standpoint. So they ended up getting, like, a brand new, at the time, like, Scion XB. I mean, Scion doesn't even exist anymore. And so they basically just ended up, pimping that one, so to speak, or doing all the upgrades to an already brand new car. I'm not even sure. They probably junked the two Ford Taurus halves and just gave the kid, a brand new Scion XB. And, good for the kid. Gets a brand new car out of it. But, man, if you've got two halves of two cars stuck together to make one brand, if you got a Frankenstein car, I feel bad for you. Like, I don't have a license. I don't have my car. Perhaps one day I will give you a tour of my daily driver, my walker, which is just in the other room. But where? And, they basically did all the upgrades to the Scion XB. And good for him, I guess. Gets a brand new car out of it. It's a safer car for he and his family. And, good on them, right? But, like, just, again, they contact these people and say that the show is strictly cosmetic. But the thing is, the car actually has to run, right? And some of them just don't. So, after reading certain things, that I've seen online and like watching a couple videos. Like they would hire a tow company to basically tow the cars that didn't run to the shops. And what, you do nothing mechanical to the cars that wouldn't run after towing them to the shop? Like, what is the whole point in pimping the car, so to speak? What's the point in upgrading the car if you already know it doesn't run? Like, is this just, hey, let's put a piano lounge in the trunk and then see what, like, people will like that. Like, come on, MTV, you know what I mean? As much, the teenager in me loved this show because I was young and stupid. And it just, I would hope that one day, like, I'd have enough money to facilitate said upgrades to a car. But as I get older, if I ever got my license and got a car, this isn't about, like, I don't want to pimp my ride. I want, like, if I was going to, there's certain upgrades, I would want things to be somewhat, like, just subtle, little upgrades. Not, there were a few where, I think I mentioned this earlier, they took the back seat out of a Buick Century and then just stuck a giant speaker in the back seat, like where the back seat would be. Like something that has no business being in a car. It was huge, okay? It was massive. Like, you turn this thing up at all, your front windshield is going to blow out because it was just that big. They did that in one of the international episodes of the show where they took the back seat out of an Audi, which I think was from 1973, which was owned by these two twins who were in a black metal band, who said that the car was used to transport them and their bandmates to gigs. Now, you can fit, the owners of the car, the twins, and then their bandmates in the car if it's got a back seat. They took the back seat out of that car and stuck a giant speaker about the same size as the one that was in the Buick Century from the US show in the back, like where the back seat would be. Man, if you know why why they have the car or why they're using this car, especially if it's, for a touring band that gets them and their bandmates to gigs and you take out the back seat, like, what are they supposed to do? Water ski down the highway? I don't, why? I understand it's strictly cosmetic and you're just doing some crazy things, but if you know why somebody has a car, right, that facilitates the need for a back seat, why would you remove the back seat? I understand that all these years later, a lot of these people look back fondly on their time from the show, and good for them. Okay, I'm glad that they had a marvelous experience, but the fact that, like, they come to the show with buckets, the show dresses them up, basically on the outside, does nothing mechanical to them, and then you basically have to sell this freshly painted, beautiful, exterior-looking bucket because it doesn't run. Doesn't make sense. My opinion. It didn't make sense. And it just, the 16-year-old in me was like, man, I wonder, like, if they did that it would be cool just to have something done to my car. I mean, I remember there was a Mercury that was done where they put, all these little monitors in the headliner, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, when is the driver ever going to watch a monitor in his headliner drive? Like, why? I don't know. You're gonna have to stop and then put the seat all the way back and then just go, hey, look what's on my ceiling. To me, that made no sense. And young me loved the show. Okay, I'm not even gonna lie. I enjoyed the show just because I knew, like, it's hokey, but, and I understand they took months to do these cars, and they made it seem like it happened just overnight, even though, like, common sense dictates, look, this stuff's going to take a while because you're removing parts, you're adding things like a hot tub or a chandelier, or, you're fabricating things, and that takes time. So they take months of work and then condense it to like a 20-minute show, which teens like me back in those days and anybody watching who's into cars at any point, I think Nolan Sykes from Donut Media said that Pimp My Ride was one of the reasons he got into cars. And, you know, that's basically where it starts. You know, you watch shows like Pimp My Ride or any Monster Garage or anything of that ilk. If you're of that age range, like I was, you fall in love with cars, you know, like it just, looking back on these upgrades, it's like, why would you do that? I don't understand it. To me, it made no sense. Like looking back on it now, 15 some odd years later, it makes no sense. You put a hot tub in a car, you put a chandelier in a car, you put giant astronomically sized speakers and woofers in a car, which, you know, and I understand that, like, again, because of legalities, some of the parts had to be removed and it was strictly for the camera. But why even bother wasting that much time and then putting them in just to see, like, oh, this would be cool? It's just one of those, like, one of these sort of, how big can we go? Like, how over the top can we get? Well, it was total, like, you know, and I don't want to say, like, the Batman series from the 60s and Pimp My Ride are on the same playing field here, but they're just as campy and they're just as hokey. It's over the top. It's, you know, it's crazy to think that, like, this was so popular. And, like, I look back on it fondly because I was an audience member just watching this show. I'm not going to lie. It was something crazy. And, you know, how can you even go wrong with something like that? But these upgrades, just, wow, how? Who? You know, there was a one where they put a TV on the hood of a car and it would flip up. I was like, but why? And turned it into there was a movie projector, and I'm thinking, like, when am I ever going to do that in my own car? Like, practicality, the practicality side of me just came out, and I'm like, when is he ever going to do that? Or when is she ever going to watch a movie in her car? Like, to me, it was way over the top, and, you know, a lot of this stuff's been debunked, but I will link a few videos and channels below to where you can see where some of these Pimp My Ride contestants and or, like, the vehicles are. I think the one channel, Brain Shatter, I think his now wife was a contestant with the Volkswagen thing, and then I think Tavarish, he picked up a Dodge Caravan that was done on the show, and I think he may have sold it or given it to someone, but I will link as many videos as I can find down below. But those are just my thoughts on Pimp My Ride. It was over the top, it was hokey, it was campy. The teenager in me enjoyed it. The nostalgic 30-plus-year-old man in me now still enjoys the show, but man, like, these upgrades and some of the things that they did were just really over the top and really far-fetched. But, you know, what can I say? It ran for several years. MTV had a hit, and it had several spin-offs in several countries around the world. So I guess it worked. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe. And I've been Leigh Dickey. This has been another episode, and we will see you in the next one. This will probably end up on Yo Nostalgia as well, so please do subscribe to that podcast. Thank you very much. Again, I've been Leigh Dickey. This has been another video on my official website, LeighTDickey.com, Leigh Dickey TV on YouTube. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. All right, Leigh Dickey signing off. Peace.